welcome to a cover story interview with Manish Tewari. Today, of course, we're going to be talking about the budget. We're going to be talking about the politics, about what's happening in Parliament, and also the politics of the opposition. Because Manish Tewari is not only a Lok Sabha MP from the Congress, which is a very rare breed nowadays, but he's also someone who's been very articulate in voicing the party's stand within Parliament and outside. So, Manish, welcome to this conversation. And I'd like to write at the very outset, to talk to you. It's been a very busy week for us. There's been the union budget. There's also been the Adani allegations, and you are one of those who's asking for a JPC probe into the matter. So where do you think the government or Parliament, where do you think Parliament is headed? Are we going to have any business at all, or are you going to keep adjourning the House?
Well, first of all, Priya, thank you very much for inviting me to your show. It's a pleasure always to be here for a quiet conversation. To answer your question straight off the bat, it really depends upon the government, because it is not about a single promoter, or it is not about some Wall Street research firm actually shorting the stock of an Indian entrepreneur. The issue is rather a little more complex than that. And when I say complex, I mean that what we really need to understand is that, has there been any systemic failure at any level? Have the regulators, the Securities Exchange Board of India, or for that matter, the Reserve Bank of India, did they err in exercising oversight that you have these allegations surfacing? And the reason why this entire episode gains a degree of seriousness is because of the manner in which the market has reacted to it. You have a strange situation whereby a relatively unknown research firm, at least in India, they may have some credentials in the United States of America, actually puts out a report. In that report, they make a series of allegations. And you have the unprecedented situation of the market reacting to it in a manner which, for the lack of a better word, is negative. Now, I cannot imagine as to why the market would react in such a manner if some unknown research firm actually levels allegations, which at the moment are completely unsubstantiated, against a conglomerate which has a sizable presence not only in India, but across the world. So therefore, as I earlier said, it is not about a promoter. It is not about a particular entity. It's not about some Wall Street research firm shorting a stock. What Parliament or lawmakers really need to look at is that, has there been any systemic failure at any level? The regulators exercise the due diligence which is required of them. And so therefore, when we demand a joint parliamentary committee, we are not on any witch hunt, or we are not trying to score political brownie points. Essentially, what we are trying to do is, as it happened in 1992 when the Joint Parliamentary Committee, after the stock market bloodbath then was set up, the objective was to see it from a systemic and a regulatory point of view. The other question, of course, is with regard to public institutions. Whether it is the Life Insurance Corporation of India or the banks, who hold sizable amount of public money in fiduciary trust. Did these institutions exercise due diligence when they took their investment decisions? Because after all, you've had even LIC stocks taking a substantive hit. And also, notwithstanding the fact that when the market was going south, some of these very, very behemoth public institutions decided to take a position. Now, were those informed positions? So these are the kind of issues which actually necessitated the demand for a joint parliamentary committee. And again, let me underscore, for the sake of clarity, this is not a witch hunt. It is not about political brownie points, and it is certainly not about trying to hunt down a particular entrepreneur or a promoter.
You mentioned 92, Manish. A lot of people are saying this is like the second Harshad Mehta scam. Is that a valid observation? Because, technically, what are the differences between the two?
Well, I first of all would hate and hesitate to use the word scam.
Okay.
At the moment, we have only certain allegations which have appeared in the public space, allegations which have been rebutted by the company concerned. So therefore, there are two distinct points of view. But notwithstanding that rebuttal, you, as I earlier mentioned, saw the markets behave in a particular manner. Mm-hmm. And therefore, did the markets react out of paranoia, or was there a feeling among the markets that maybe the regulators did not do the job required of them? So rather than jump to any conclusions or jump to a particular point of view, I think it is better to hold your horses and see whether government agrees to this demand that there should be a systemic probe by a parliamentary committee.
But why then the other side? Why the parliamentary committee? Why are you not letting the normal course of investigation take a stand? Our RBI has asked for an inquiry. There are, checks and balances on the way. You don't trust them? You think they haven't done their job?
Well, if they would have done their job, we wouldn't have been in the situation that we find ourselves in. So actually, the inquiry is less about the entrepreneur and more about the oversight agencies. The fact is that if the oversight agencies would have done their job, they would have done their due diligence. And this is not the first failure you are seeing. You had the Dewan Housing Finance Limited, you've had the Punjab and Maharashtra Bank, you've had Satyam. You see, in most of these cases, there is clear oversight failure. And because there is a certain amount of deference that we exercised when it comes to the regulators, they unfortunately have been able to kind of get scot-free. But there comes a time when there is a need to really look at their role, rather than the role of a particular entrepreneur or a particular company. Parliament and lawmakers have that remit to see that the architecture which they have put in place, the institutions that they have put in place, whether they are efficaciously discharging their responsibility.
But a lot of people are saying post Chanda Koch's arrest, a lot of banks that have lent, or take money against Adani shares will now not really, take a nod from the political masters, because now the road has been set clear that, it's the bank that's going to be held responsible. So there seems to be some kind of checks and balances in place.
Well, I do not know. I don't think it's fair to compare apples and pears, because you see, ICICI is a different situation altogether. All I'm saying is that let Parliament, which is the appropriate forum, because it is Parliament. You see, SEBI was created after the 1992 JPC, when the stock markets, or the 1993 JPC, when the stock markets, went through a particularly rough phase. And that's how the entire Security and Exchange Board and the entire law surrounding it really emerged. And then at a different point in time, when there was again an aberration in the market, Parliament did step in. So under those circumstances, when statute creates regulators, then it becomes the responsibility of those who actually created and empowered these regulators to also see as to whether they are functioning in a proper and efficacious manner.
Okay, fair enough. Now for the budget, Manish, this budget has been hailed as, reach out to the middle class, which the government had been ignoring until now, if I may add that. Do you see this as an election budget? Do you think the middle class has really going to benefit, or this is just some lip service? Because, people are comparing the old tax regime with the new one. And at the end of the day, it's not really very much that is coming through.
I think, Priya, there are larger issues at play out here. Now, if
Hmm.
you look at the budget, the
Yeah.
size of the budget is 45 lakh crores. Now, 17 lakh 86,000 crores out of that is unfunded. That is the fiscal deficit. So essentially, what you have at the moment is projections for about 28 or 29 lakh crores, which will be funded through revenue and various other sources. Now, government says that it is going to go to the market and borrow almost 11 lakh crores or 10.8 lakh crores. Now, if that were to happen, then where is the space for corporate India to really go out and access financing if government of India is going to mop up a majority of that financing? And the reason why this is of concern is because given the geopolitical situation, the Russian aggression on Ukraine, the recession in which the advanced economies find themselves, there is not very much of money going around. So therefore, this then, if you juxtapose with the fact that government is planning to put in 10 lakh crores into capital expenditure, absolutely subverts and short circuits the approach of the government from 2019-20 onwards, when they gave 1,45,000 crores in credit or in concessions to the corporate sector by lowering the corporate income tax rate, thinking that it would fire the engines of the economy, which clearly did not happen. And so, therefore, with this crowding out of access to market borrowings, coupled with the huge 33% jump in government's capital expenditure, absolutely knocks the floor out of the government's approach, whereby they thought that corporate India would really kickstart and fire the cylinders of the economy. I think that's the larger issue at stake. And insofar as giving some minimal income tax concessions is concerned, ultimately, what will this add up to? Add up to 25-30,000 crores. Now, even if you put 30,000 crores into the hands of people, is it really going to create that kind of consumption demand which will fire your economy? Obviously not. So therefore, the government really seems to be falling between two stools. They want the private sector to step up to the plate. The private sector is not stepping up to the plate. You then try and do it through government expenditure, which clearly has its limitations. And consumption demand is not picking up because you are maybe missing the 600-pound gorilla in the room. And the 600-pound gorilla in the room is that post-COVID, perhaps consumption patterns have undergone a radical transformation. People are not just spending the way that they used to before COVID-19 for a variety of reasons. Insecurity, incomes have taken a hit. People have learned that you can actually live in one shirt and one jacket, and you do not need 20 shirts and 20 jackets. So maybe you are looking at a dramatic paradigm shift in consumption patterns. And therefore, the whole approach of a consumption-driven economic recovery might completely be a totally fallacious paradigm to work with.
That's a very interesting point, Manish. In fact, what you raised about the difference in changing consumption patterns. So then what should the economy be? Savings driven? Because, I assume that's what the insecurity is leading to. People are worried they're going to lose their savings, lose their jobs.
So ultimately, even if you have savings, till the time you do not have consumption, you are not going to have corporates investing because they are not going to create capacity if people are not going to be buying. And coupled with that, you see, given the recession in the in the Western economies or in the consuming economies, you obviously see a dampening of demand, even in those countries. So pretty much it's like a double whammy. Right now, what is the way out of it? Will the traditional approaches really work, which we've tried so far? Obviously, that doesn't seem to be the case. Certain countries which put money directly into the hands of people, for example, the United States of America actually put money directly into the hands of people. Obviously, dollar being the default currency of the world, they can take those liberties. But that seemed to have at least helped in keeping the American economy afloat. Compared to that, what we did when COVID-19 actually was rampaging through India and the world was really extend credit lines, right? We said, we'll give credit. Right now, credit ultimately has to be repaid. And that's why, if you look at the MSME sector, sector and the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Finance did a report on that, had unpaid dues from government, from private suppliers, to the tune of almost about 10.6 lakh crores, till the middle of last year. The situation may have mitigated a little. And that's why you've really seen a K-shaped recovery, whereby large corporates have been able to kind of bounce back. But the MSME sector, which accounts for the bulk of your employment, has really not been able to recover from the hit.
And has anything been done for the MSME sector, or do you think this budget has...
I think the government did try and give certain concessions, the productivity-linked incentive scheme, but how much it has really worked on the ground, the jury is out on that. You see, government has cut Manrega spending by 13,000 crores in this budget. Now, the obvious extrapolation of that is that reverse migration has started, or rather reverse migration has stopped, and people have started going back to the cities where they were working earlier. But again, if you juxtapose that with the Manrega numbers for the May and June of 2022, which I recall from the top of my head since I led the discussion on inflation in Parliament during the monsoon session, Manrega numbers at that point in time, or Manrega demand, was at a record high. So therefore, I think what this budget conceptually demonstrates is that the government is also struggling to find a path. That what is that path which will actually pave the way for a sustainable recovery, for the simple reason that you have unemployment at an all-time high.
Right.
Then you have the paradigm of that you've actually bought crude oil and gas at hugely discounted prices since the March of 2022. You've not passed on those benefits to the people. Petrol still is over 100 rupees to a liter, and LPG cylinder is still selling over 1,000 rupees. So therefore, that advantage of discounted oil, because Russia's share in India's as India's crude oil supplier jumped from 0.2% in the fiscal 2021-22 to almost 25% currently. So obviously, when there's such a dramatic shift in your procurement patterns, you are doing it because you are getting oil on the cheap. Then if you're getting oil on the cheap, why is it that the benefits are not being passed on to the people?
Good point. In fact, that's something the government hasn't been able to answer for a while. I know you've been raising this question in your columns also. I'm going to take a break, Manish, and come back and talk a little bit about opposition politics. Post Bharat Jodo, there seems to be some revival within the Congress. We saw that all-party meeting of the opposition where we saw even Aam Aadmi Party and TMC attending, but these parties were missing at the Bharat Jodo climax in Srinagar. So what is the chemistry within the opposition? That's something I'm going to talk to Manish, but after a quick break. Hello and welcome back to our cover story conversation with Manish Tewari. Manish, before the break, we were talking economics, but now let's talk some politics also. In terms of where does the Congress stand? We saw Rahul Gandhi, the entry he got when he walked into Parliament. There seems to be a lot of cheer around him, but how is that translating on the ground?
See, ultimately, we are a pluralistic democracy. So therefore, you are not really a two-party system whereby two parties are really competing for the same pie. Here you have multiple people who are competing yet cooperating on issues. So therefore, this multiplicity, which actually makes for a vibrant democracy, is something which is at play on a daily basis. And therefore, if you expect that this competition for space would mitigate, I don't see that happening. The best case scenario would be that on issues, there is a convergence and a common position can be taken. Like, for example, today, which is Thursday, the 2nd of February, 2023, you saw the opposition parties take a common position with regard to what has happened in the market, right? With regard to the allegations which have been made and the demand for an inquiry / investigation / a joint parliamentary committee. So you saw a convergence of positions, the meeting that you talked about. So I think the way forward is really going to be that if you are able to bring the maximum number of people to converge around issues, and you can really put together an issue-based programmatic, thematic platform where you have the maximum consensus on, let's say, a minimum number of issues, you will have a modicum of opposition unity.
What I'm hearing from the Congress is that, they're still realizing that Rahul Gandhi still as a leader is not even accepted to all the opposition parties. We saw, how many of them did a no-show for that invitation of his for the Bharat Jodo. But what they're hoping to say is that, we will not portray Rahul Gandhi as the face of the Congress, but a team, like with the Raghu Ram Rajan, with the Kaushik Basu, and various other people, also outsiders, insiders, karke. There will be a team of people to show that this is what the Congress stands for in terms of governance, rather than one Rahul Gandhi being the face of the Congress.
Well, you see, eventually, if we were to rewind back to 2004, the United Progressive Alliance also emerged as a post-election construct.
Right.
It never emerged as a pre-election construct. When 2009 UPA2 happened, it actually became a pre-election construct in certain senses of the word. So essentially, what you would really see in terms of an alignment of forces or an alignment of stars, in my humble estimation, would really be a post-2024 situation.
Like what happened with the Janata Party post-emergency. I think everybody came together after defeating Indira Gandhi.
Well, Janata Party actually was a pre-election situation.
I mean, the opposition parties rallied around.
Whereby the opposition parties actually got together and formed the Janata Party, and it became a one-on-one fight. I do not see that there will be a one-on-one fight, because in many states you have people who are quote-unquote in the opposition to the current government are actually simultaneously competing for space.
I think that is the big problem, because Jagan is fighting you in Telangana and so on and so forth. Akhilesh,
Well, those are the realities of a multi-party democracy, right? And so therefore, you really have to factor it in. And that's why I keep saying that if you can have a maximum consensus on the minimum number of issues which can give you a way forward, that can really become the starting point of what quote unquote is called opposition unity.
Fair enough. Just last question. In terms of, because if you look at the elections slated for this year, there's going to be a big face-off between the BJP and the Congress in most of the big states, Karnataka, Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh. And the Congress is actually slated to tip to do well according to pollsters in at least 3 of the 4 states. But even if that happens in 2024, the BJP is going to have Ram Mandir, they're going to have G20, they're going to have Narendra Modi. Facing all that, is the Congress going to be ready with some narrative, some action plan?
Look, every election is different. A state election is different from a national election. So therefore, what you see playing itself out in a particular state necessarily may not be the same result when it comes to a parliament election in that particular state. These are 2 different realities altogether. But as I said earlier, if you are able to evolve that minimum consensus on maximum or a maximum consensus on a minimum number of issues, you will have a tangible way forward.
But that didn't happen, no? That was somewhat the formula you were toying with even in 2014. Or 2019, sorry.
Well, 2019, again, was a different situation. You see, the 2019 elections were held in the backdrop of a very horrific terror attack, which took the lives of a large number of our paramilitary personnel, which was followed by coercive strikes across the border, whereby a new paradigm in terms of the action-reaction redux was set into motion. So therefore, the 2019 elections actually took place under a very peculiar set of circumstances. And I do hope that those circumstances, for the sake of our national security, never ever do get repeated. But as I said, that the BJP, with all the pluses that you counted, is also facing 10 years of anti-incumbency, or would be facing 10 years of anti-incumbency. And the one thing which at least I've learned in my 4 decades as a political activist is that unlike many other countries, Indians are actually invested in the ballot box. We tend to keep quiet and then very, very swiftly execute a change. And that's been the trajectory of the Indian democratic experiment, at least going back to 1967. So I don't think it's a done deal for anybody as we speak in the February of 2023.
Okay. On that note, Manish, thank you so much for this conversation. And I do hope that Parliament will continue next week, because I was looking forward to your response on the budget, though we got a sneak peek of it right now here on this show. But thank you so much for this conversation.
Very much. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. See.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.